Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar where we're focused on preparation for mediation. My name's Kimberly Sweeney. For those who don't know me, I'm a certified divorce coach myself, and I'm here tonight with Kelly Sutton, who is also a certified divorce coach, and she is a mediator, alternative dispute resolution specialist, and a lawyer. So we've got lots of expertise here with Kelly. And we're going to help you all understand what the mediation process looks like, kind of how you can show up in that process, how a divorce coach can support you in that process. And Kelly will just talk you through a few tips and tricks that might be helpful if you are somebody going through the mediation process. So anyone that's on the call, feel free to type any questions into the chat and we can answer them as we go. But welcome, Kelly, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Kimberly, and thanks for the introduction. As Kimberly said, I'm a divorce coach and do quite a bit of mediation work, both in the commercial sector and in the family area. So I'm really excited to be here tonight to help anyone that needs a little bit of advice and just help them understand the process a bit more.
Yeah, thank you. That's so good because it is a process, isn't it? And I think people don't understand that, there are all these alternative dispute resolution options, and mediation is a great option for resolving some of the negotiations and discussions. And if there's a little bit of conflict, then putting both parties into a room with a neutral third party sometimes helps to just reduce some of that conflict and see the wood for the trees, right? Like instead of just negotiating through lawyers or going to court, then this is a great alternative dispute resolution process that we're all very fond of, and Kelly has worked in this area for quite some time, so is well versed in the ins and outs of what, how successful and what the mediation process can look like for New Zealanders, right?
Right. And the great thing about it is that it's up to the parties to make their own decisions. So,
Yeah.
it keeps all the resolution process, all the decision making in the hands of the people that are part of that mediation. The mediator is not allowed to make any decisions for you, and you don't have a judge making decisions for you. You know what's important for you, you know what's important for your family and for your children, and it keeps that decision making in your hands. So I think that's what's key. It's really, really important for people to know that.
Yeah. And so for people that don't know anything about mediation, how would you explain the mediation process, Kelly?
Well, the first thing to know is that it's a voluntary process, so both parties need to agree to go to mediation. And once you've got that agreement, then you choose a mediator, and you both have to agree on a mediator as well. And it's a private, confidential process. So everything that's said in mediation is kept in that room, unless, of course, there's agreement to, speak to your lawyers or speak to your support people outside of that. But it's all kept in the room, so it's all confidential and it's not, exposed to anyone outside of the room. And then you have, like we said, a neutral who's a mediator, and they're not there to make decisions for you, but they're there to help facilitate conversation, communication, and that sharing of information, which is really important to make good decisions and to help understand each other's perspectives, because that's only when you start understanding each other's perspectives on certain issues, then you can start really getting to the point of going, okay, what options do we have? Let's explore all the options we have to resolve these issues. So during that process, parties have an idea that they can sort of sit down, they can work out, what are the issues we need to discuss, and it's your issues, it's not what the mediator says the issues are. Discuss their interests and what their needs are. What is really behind those things that are really important to you, and why are they important to you? And the understanding behind those things that are important, and also feelings come out as well, and that is key. It doesn't have to be emotionally driven, but sometimes those things that are important need to be told with feelings, that this is the reasons why. And then they can also provide each other information, and that information is really important to make intentional decisions moving forward. So it needs to be a transparent process. all the cards need to be on the table.
Mm.
Everything needs to be there. You need all the information you need to make those decisions. And then once you've got that, you can start exploring options and the possibilities of resolution, and what we call is like expanding the pie. It's not about a right, wrong, this, that. We've only got 50% of everything, split it up. It's about what can we do to actually get some really good resolutions that can be mutually agreed, and there can be some compromises, and what are we going to do for our kids? What are we going to do for our asset separation? So it's a really good process with the help of a mediator who facilitates that conversation, facilitates that exchange of information, and facilitates that understandings to help those parties really come to some good agreements moving forward.
It's so true, isn't it? And I liked how you said it's not just understanding why you're there for the mediation, but the feelings behind it, the reasons behind it, your reasons why. Because if you don't understand each other's reasons why, then it's really hard to come to an open agreement that's negotiable, right? And this is about being negotiable. It's not about being one-sided, or it's one way or no way. It is about being open-minded to look at all the options and work through that with that neutral third party.
Absolutely. And also in looking at, the family as a whole. And that's what's really important here in mediation, is that you've got that ability to see what will work for your family. And that's something that a court and a judge can't do. They just look at the facts, they apply the law. They're not really have an understanding of what works for your children, what works for your family moving forward. So here you've got that opportunity to do that. And each child is different as well. And what's going to work for each child, what's important for each child. You can actually really have those good conversations, and conversations about what your future looks like.
Yeah.
Because that's, again, a real big point of mediation. It's future focused.
Yeah.
What do you need in your future to make sure that, you can be a family in two homes and make it work really well?
Yeah. And thinking, as you say, all along about what's best for the children. They do get a voice, and they do get a consideration in this. It's not just about what both of you want as parents. It's about thinking what is going to be the best option for our children. And as we always say, ages and stages, and you might have multiple children at different ages, so you do have to consider each child and where they're at and what their needs are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is and the great thing is it's a flexible process.
Yeah.
So you as a party can say what you need in order to really confidently participate in that process. And it may be you need to be in a certain safe space for that to be, a place where you're confident. It may be that you need to feel empowered in certain areas, where you feel like there might be a bit of a power imbalance. What do you need from the mediator to support you in that process to make it really worthwhile for you?
Yeah.
And there might be special needs. You may be only able to focus for a couple of hours. So that becomes, do you have 3 sessions of 2 hours? And do you need, definitely, if you need some food, you don't want to go in hangry. So tell the mediator, give me some food. I need breaks.
Yeah.
I need to, emotionally regulate. And they can really help you to design a process that it can really work.
And am I right, Kelly, in that, before you sit together in a mediation process, you both get some individual time with the mediator to speak through what your needs and wants are first?
Absolutely. You'll always have an intake session with the mediator, and they'll ask you what you believe your issues are. They'll ask you, what obstacles do you think may happen during the mediation that may prevent that good communication going on. They'll ask you a little bit about your communication styles and your communication pattern, because as we know that even though we've been with, people have been with each other for a long time, they fall back into those patterns. And that's, that's where the coaching becomes really valuable. It's about, changing those patterns so you have those really good communication strategies on board, so you can, really talk about things intentionally. And then they will ask you, what do you need? What support do you need from me?
Yeah.
And what support do you need from the process? Because this process is about you. What support people may you need in the mediation?
Yes, true.
And the mediator will talk through what the role of those support people are, because they're not there to make the decisions either, and they're not there to provide advice. You may have lawyers as your support people, but again, the mediator will be really conscious of it's about the parties getting that understanding of each other's perspectives. The lawyers are only there to say, you know, this is the law, and this is what you need to know. This is the information you need to know about making an informed decision. And then the lawyers will often, will draft the agreement if they're part of that mediation. Most mediators prefer to do it with the parties and bring in the lawyers later. But, you know, some people feel that they need their lawyer there to feel empowered and to feel confident in that mediation process. So a mediator will work with what works for each party.
Yeah, that's so true. And from my experience as a divorce coach, when I've been working with clients, preparing them for mediation or supporting them through the mediation process, I find that generally if it's a parenting plan, then most couples can turn up and just have the mediator there to support them in that process. But if it's more a settlement agreement and the asset kind of part of the divorce and separation process, then sometimes they do want to have their lawyers there to get that legal advice before they actually agree to something, right? So there's different ways that you can show up and present in that mediation process, isn't there? Along with, as you said, a support person. So a support person can go with either party to that mediation process if both parties have mutually agreed on those support people.
Yeah.
And the role of a support person is not to give them any advice during that mediation, is it, Kelly? It's just to be there by their side to help them regulate their emotions, support them through that. If you need to leave the room, if you get a bit heightened or a bit emotional, then your support person can leave the room with you and kind of talk through things with you and help you be calmer in that process to re-enter the mediation process and hopefully complete it. So there is a good role there as a support person, and a support person can be friend, it can be family, it can be another professional, it can be a divorce coach. So there's lots of options, isn't there? Yeah, you don't have to do it alone, I think is our point.
Yeah, and it's also good to have sometimes a support person is needed as another ear, because sometimes, you know, you are, you know, it is a really high stress situation in mediation, and there's high stakes involved. These are, you know, the care of your children or the asset separation. So it does create those fears, and sometimes just having someone there to go, oh, I heard it this way. Remember someone said that, and it's not about advice, but it's just having that other person there as another ear to, this is what was said, to help gather that information that you need and make those decisions.
That's so true, so true. And so I've got a couple of questions in the chat. Shall we answer those and then we can, let's have a wee look. See. So somebody wants to know, how do you find a good mediator and one that works with you both?
Right. Now, and that's a really good question. So there's a couple of checklists I go through when I'm coaching someone about looking at a mediator. We have two organisations in New Zealand called AMINS and Resolution Institute, and they're our main training institutions for certified mediators. So that's one good place to go to those websites, and they will be certified mediators who are, you know, very well qualified. And it all depends what you're looking for in terms of mediation, whether you just want an FDR mediator who deals with, that's family dispute resolution, deals with care of the child, or you want someone that also, or alternatively deals with the separation of assets, relationship property. And they will have them on the websites, and they will have a little bio about each mediator. So that's a good start. If you're looking for an FDR mediator, there are 3 providers in New Zealand who do FDR mediation. We've got Family Works, we've got Family Dispute Resolution Centre, and we've got Fairway Resolution. And they work in different areas in New Zealand. So also going to their websites and getting a little bit of information about the mediators. But the best thing to do is, one, listen to recommendations, because some people would have gone through mediation, and if they've heard about a good mediator, that's always a really good thing to listen to. You can ask for certain mediators with the FDR providers to try and get that mediator. But, you know, again, it depends on their availability and, you know, and whether you're willing to wait for them. If you're hiring a private mediator, I would always say, give them a call and ask them a few questions. Ask them about their approach. You know, what is, you know, are they a facilitative type of mediator? You know, what's their expertise in? You know, sometimes I've had clients that my background's in business and corporate, and they'll have family businesses. So they'll want me because I understand that family business and two partners working in that family business and the importance of keeping that family business operating and moving forward, and, you know, and working together on that, because that's where all their assets may be. Some mediators may specialize in special needs children, and that's really important. You know, you've got to need, you want someone that has that background that you really need. Ask them about their background, ask them about their experience, ask them about their training. How long have they been mediating? You know, what sort of results do they get? You know, do they get a lot of positive results moving forward? Ask them about the cost, because that can be really key. FDR is can be government funded if you're on a lower income level, but then they have a cap on funding, so it's actually a really reasonable cost to go through the FDR process and providers. Some want to go through private mediators, and they can be really expensive as well. So ask about the costs, and ask about their the time and the convenience. You know, what does their schedule look like? How long is it going to be until they can see you, see the other person, and get a joint meeting set up? So that's really important, and how they mediate. I'm a mediator who likes to do only 2 hours at a time, because I think people concentrate a lot in those 2 hours and then they find it really difficult. So I might do a few sessions of 2 hours, but if mediation is going really well and we get to 3 or 4 hours and everything's done and they're comfortable with that, then I'm open and flexible about that as well. But that flexibility is key. And then ask those questions. I need this sort of support. Are you there to provide that? How can you do that? Especially if it's a cultural, you know, a mediation where culture is really important. That's important to get the right mediator. There's mediators who are fluent in different languages, understand, especially Māori, understand tikanga, understand the cultural differences between two people that have different cultures. Religion's also really important, if that's something important to you. So really ask those questions of the mediator before you agree on that, and always go and look for, you know, maybe interview a couple of them. So you can, and remember that both of you need to agree on a mediator. So both of you need to have that conversation first with them to see that whether that trust is there, because that's key for mediation, that you trust the mediator, because you need that you know, that trust in that room to make sure you can be open.
It's so true, isn't it, Kelly? And it's making sure that both parties are happy with that mediator, because if one person feels that it's not having a choice, or that it's been forced on them to go to mediation and they don't get to have a say in who the mediator is, then they're not really fully going to engage in that process. So you both need that buy-in, don't you? You both need to build that relationship with that mediator to feel confident that they understand both of your needs and what's best for both of you in this situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of it's government funded and some of it's subsidized by the government, and I just want to point out that generally in mediation, most of the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but both parties are expected to kind of jointly pay for those costs, aren't they?
Yeah, and that is, most of the time it's shared costs. I mean, a lot of people do it differently. It might come from a joint account.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are expected to share the costs of the mediator. Absolutely.
Okay, we've got another couple of questions here. What would you suggest mediation, or would you suggest mediation to your client as a divorce coach?
Yes, absolutely. You know, if there's issues that need to be resolved and they can't be resolved between yourselves, I would recommend mediation, primarily because it keeps the decision making in your hands. But what I would recommend is getting really good preparation for mediation, because a lot of people go to mediation and they don't know what it's about. They don't know the process. They're not prepared. They're not prepared with, regulating their emotions. As I said, you've got the people are pushing each other's buttons. They don't know what the negotiation process is. They don't know how to make proposals. So getting that really, and that's where a coach can come in really, really well, is that they're there to help plan for the mediation, help the client prepare for a mediation, and help them really navigate that process, and help them with those skills and tools that they need to really perform well in that mediation and get the best out of it. So I would say, yes, I definitely would recommend mediation. And most coaches will know of a few mediators that they can recommend contacting to talk through whether they're the right fit for you. But definitely think about that preparation before you get to mediation, because a mediator has to remain neutral, and they can't always fully prepare each of you in the same, at the same way that you need to be prepared. A coach who's trained in pre-mediation divorce coaching can really help you walk in and feel really confident and courageous about the process, and that is so key. It's all about going in with the right intentions, the goals, and really wanting to come out with some decisions.
Yeah, because it's not a court process, it's a mutually negotiated agreement that both parties have to be willing to negotiate to get the best outcome, right? And a divorce coach can help you think about different options that you can put on the table as part of that negotiation process. As you've said, Kelly, teach you how to regulate your emotions, give you tools to work on how to show up and be in that process with regulated emotions. And if you do get a little bit dysregulated, then we can give you tips and tools on how to bring yourself back to who you want to be in that process. But also that preparation of, if it's a parenting plan, then having a bit of an idea before you go to mediation of what you are negotiating for, right? Like have a bit of a drafted parenting plan that you generally have worked on with your divorce coach or somebody that has a greater understanding of what parenting plans look like, so that you've got a really good clear picture of what is going to be best for your children, and then you can work on that together as parents and co-parents in that process.
Absolutely. Be goal orientated. That's the key. And while being goal orientated, have the facts that you need and the information you need in order to have those good discussions, and have everything there that you can make a decision. And if you don't, and make sure you've got that expert advice before you go in. It may be, you need the legal advice before you go in. You may need a child specialist to help out a little bit. Like, I've got children of different ages, what's best for them, what sort of, a counsellor might be able to help in that area as well. Or if you're doing separation of relationship property, have you been to a mortgage broker? Have you worked out whether you can, buy out the house, what you can and what you can't do, and have that information, and that's going to help with your proposals and your goals at the end. What are your proposals? What can you do? What can you put on the table? And be prepared to listen and understand the other side as well. So you can, again, expand that pie and look at lots of options, not just go in with, I want this, this, and this, because mediation is not going to work if you just go in with certain positions. So it's about, opening your mind to possibilities. And that's the key. If you open your mind to possibilities, you can come out with some really amazing outcomes.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's about, thinking about the family as a whole, moving together. You might not be living in the same home anymore, but you're still moving forward together to co-parent your children. So you do want to foster some kind of amicable relationship with your co-parent to be able to parent your children the best way possible. So someone else has just asked a question saying, during the mediation process, is it all documented and written down? They want to know.
Okay, so what we do as mediators is that we do not do legal documents. If they're a mediator and a lawyer, they may do a document, but you still always, especially if it's a separation of assets, mediation, you still have to go back and get your lawyers to document it and agree it and get the legal advice on it, and that's key. But a mediator will write down what you want to be documented. So as you go, if there's an agreement, a mediator will generally go, so you've agreed on, do you agree that you've agreed on this, and how would you like to word that? So that means if everything's put in your words, then you know what you've agreed to. And it's really good to reflect and go back over that, especially if you're going over it with a lawyer, that it reflects exactly what you think you agreed to in the mediation. So yes, it is documented throughout what you agree to. And also those, how do we put that in practice? What's the next step? And that's the end of the mediation. You've agreed to this. What's the next step? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? What does that look like? Reality test it. Is that going to work? Is it going to work for the kids? Is it going to work for your work situation? And all those things sort of need to be documented as well, so that you've thought through that whole process. But generally at the end, as a parenting plan, you can have it documented. I send it back out to the clients, and they make changes back and forth if they need to, or if they go, no, that's exactly what we agreed to, thank you. And sometimes they'll sign it, but sometimes it's just a document they need that they can go back to in case they struggle in the future with. But the key thing about a parenting plan is minimizing that future conflict. So that's what's fantastic, is having something in writing, and usually they prefer to sign it, but it's their document.
Yeah, their personal family document. Yeah, that's so true. And as you say, like it's future-proofing it to avoid future conflict, future arguments. We've agreed on these things. Even sometimes it's agreeing on things that you don't know what the future holds, but it's like, what does it look like if we repartner, if either of us repartner? That kind of stuff can go in the parenting plan to avoid future conflict if these things arise. Yeah.
And it's an evolving document, like, how do we go back? I always put in there, when are you going to meet up and look at this again? And come back to this, because kids grow up and kids have different needs. And as you said, families evolve. So generally there's like a regular every year. Let's go back and look at it again. And if there is conflict, then they can come back to you as a mediator and say, hey, look, this is where we're stuck again. But generally, the process is about trying to cover as much things as possible and being flexible again, so you can open your mind to something might come up in the future that we didn't think about.
Yeah. And someone else has just asked a question, which is one that I get a lot as well, is what do you do if your co-parent doesn't stick to the agreed plan? What's the option?
And so that is, so mediation is not, it's not a legal document. And if we are talking about parenting plans, sometimes people will lodge their parenting plan with the court if they think it's going to be a real issue. And that's something you can talk about with your lawyers. And if you lodge it with the court and it's signed off by the court, then they can go back to court if there's breaches of the parenting plan. But that is, I get a lot of that as a coach.
Yeah.
They're not sticking to the plan. They don't want to go back and mediate, and they've just gone off and changed. So what you do is that the best thing to do is work with your coach through that. What can you do to take back control? What's in your control? And what's really important to you about raising the kids?
This is so true.
And
it does sometimes come down to, you can't control what's happening in that other parent's house, but as long as the kids are safe and they're well cared for and they're happy, you do have to let some of that control go as the other parent, right? And know that in your home, you care for them one way, and in the other parent's home, they care for them a little bit differently, but as long as they're still safe and well loved and cared for, then that's what's important.
Absolutely. And I think the one that comes back quite a lot for me is just when you get situations where there might be medical issues or schooling, about what schools they go to. And those are things that, where you do need to come together and have those really good conversations. And it's those, those big decisions. So that's why it's great to just have a plan, and that parenting plan. What happens if we don't agree on something? What's our next step? Is it back to mediation? Is it, do we need to bring in an objective person? Do we need to bring in a specialist doctor to talk us through it? That sort of thing. So it's like sort of trying to prevent that future conflict, because those are the issues that are the big ones.
Yeah, that's so true. And often kind of stuff, just it does come up in the early phases of that co-parenting relationship, isn't it? When you've moved apart as a family, you're parenting in two separate homes. It takes, you know, a year or two to kind of have it all fall into place and have that harmony back again. And after a while, you tend to be able to just have these discussions with your co-parent without having to involve mediators or outside parties. But in those
Absolutely.
early months, or, you know, first year or two, you might need that support of that mediator or that third party. But our role as mediators and coaches is to set you up for success and teach you, give you the groundwork to teach you how to do this on your own as your co-parenting relationship evolves and grows. Because if you're separating with quite young children, you've got many years of having to be in each other's lives and be co-parents. And so our hope for our clients is that you can, you know, put some things aside and show up as the best parents you can be for your children. And if that means having, you know, regular discussions with your co-parent about the children's needs and small changes and shifts that might need to be made, then we would hope eventually you'd be able to discuss those things together.
And that's the great thing about coaching, is that, you know, we provide our clients with those skills to have those good communications, those good conversations, and help them to sort of, you know, look at it more as okay, we need to look at the best interests of the kids and remove ourselves a wee bit and our feelings and our emotions, and how do we unhook from those triggers and go back to being our best selves,
Yeah.
and what's important as our best self as a parent. So that's where you know, mediation does help with a little bit of skill building, but I always say that coaching is really key, and that's that. And even in preparation for mediation, it's that skill building,
Yeah.
because that's what you take into your parenting, and that's what you take into your co-parenting, and that's when it really makes a difference. It's a, you know, it's future skills
Yes.
for future learning. Yeah.
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 And look, you use those skills in many other aspects of your life. Once you've learnt these skills, you can take them into the workplace, you can take them into extended family discussions and communication. So they're always good skills to learn, and you will always use them in life, and you'll teach your children these skills as life. I always think you mirror the behavior, right? And so not only you're mirroring to your ex-spouse a good behavior and bringing your best self to the table, but you're showing your children, you know, that you did the best you could in this process, and you want to show up and be the best parent you can be, the best co-parent you can be, and communicate the best way you possibly can.
Yeah. And, you know, conflict shouldn't be seen in such, it's always seen in a bad light, but it's actually a really opportunity to grow and to learn, and to, you know, if you can show your kids that you can learn and grow from conflict, and come out with some really good resolutions, and better skills that
Yeah.
you've developed in terms of that, then that's really important for them. That's key for them to be resilient. And move that into their future years as well. It's something to sort of, we always see it in such a negative light, but, you know, conflict does cause the world to move forward. There's conflict in every single part of our lives, and it's about really managing that conflict well to grow and learn from it.
You'll end up a better person all round, won't you? And understanding your conflict style, because, you know, we all have good and bad in our own conflict style. So understanding what you could do better and what you already are doing well, right? And managing that. So recognizing, okay, I'm not, you know, managing my best self in my conflict right now, but I am recognizing it, and I'm gonna just make small shifts to improve my communication in the way that I am delivering these messages or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do work a lot with our client on that self-reflection, because it's
Yes.
okay, human, you know, we are human, we are triggered, we do react, but just learning that self-reflection, all that happened, how do I change it next time? And how do I, you know, do I just need to breathe? Do I need to walk away? What do I need to do? And that's just what makes it. And another big part of that preparing for mediation is role play.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot of that in coaching, and that just helps you prepare for what you may get and how you react. And the more you do that role play, the more they're like, okay, we're set for this. It's not gonna, something from left field's not gonna freak you out. And it's like, okay, I've done this before. I know where I'm gonna be. And that again, that's part of that learning to self-regulate, and learning conflict management and learning communication strategies. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think recognizing, that we're not always all perfect, and sometimes we don't manage the conflict well, and we recognize that we could have done something differently or better, but next time we can give it a better go. We can try to do better next time. So recognizing where you went wrong and what you could change next time to do it better. Somebody else has just asked a very curious question. I like this one. Does mediation ever manage to bring couples back together again? Have you ever found that, Kelly?
I've brought couples back together in coaching. So
Amazing.
yeah, so that's been a really good thing. Especially in that shall I stay, shall I go? I also another thing, I haven't had, by the time I get couples in mediation, it's pretty far down the line. But there is also something called relationship mediation, which is fairly new to New Zealand, and that's about couples who really want to work together to work on their relationship and enrich it. And it's similar to mediation, but it's about working on those goals and communication strategies and future focus. It's not, replaying the past, what's happened in the past. It's learning new communication strategies, and that seems to be starting to do a little bit more and more in New Zealand, where I've had people come to me more saying, we want to do this before we start thinking about separating, because we love each other, but we're really struggling. So mediation can be used in that way. And I know some of the FDR providers do relationship mediation as well. And again, relationship mediation can really help with blended families, because blended families bring in, not two parents, but four parents and four parenting ideas and different values. So you can do a little bit of that relationship mediation with new partners to work out, what do we want for this new family moving forward. So I'm sure mediators might have brought people back together. Unfortunately, I haven't, but I know as a coach I have, and it's always a really lovely thing to make people really think a bit more before they make that decision to separate. Yeah.
It's so true. And I do love that you brought up the blended families, because that's the next part of it, right? Like often if we're at a certain age and our kids are, a bit older, often we do meet a new partner with kids as well. And whether we all gel and go together or not is a different story. So that mediation process for blended families would probably be quite helpful, wouldn't it, to bring all parties together, all the
That's
adults.
really helpful. And, you can think about the even just the calendar schedules to try and, move around. I have people, a lot of the people that I've worked in blended families all have 3 or 4 kids each.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids to navigate, and 4 different families, 4 different parents. So even that can be helpful, but keeping those same values and keeping those same just rules, rules around, homework, and who plays what sport, and just a little bit of that structure so kids can move seamlessly, because then they're navigating new children in the family. So there's a lot of kids to navigate. So sometimes the parents need to understand, what are the kids navigating here as well.
Yeah, it's not
So
just
they
what the
don't kind of
parents are
get lost.
navigating.
So yeah, it is a really beneficial process. And as I said, it's quite new in New Zealand, but it's been working quite well in America, and Australia has picked up on it, and they're doing a lot more training in Australia as well. That's where I did my training. There's quite a few relationship mediators in New Zealand that you can approach for that.
Brilliant. That's great. Well, thank you, Kelly. If there's anyone that's got any last questions before we finish up, but I think we've probably covered most things. Is there anything else you can think of, Kelly, that we haven't covered that you'd like to share tonight?
I think just in terms of a coach and how a coach can help you prepare for mediations, there's certain goals that clients really need to think about before they go into mediation. And we sort of touched on a few of those things. And, one is that understanding of the process, so they can actually overcome their fears of going into a process that they don't understand. Again, that skill development. What do they need? What do they need to make them feel empowered so they can really participate in this process and be successful in the process? That proposal development. I always talk about tiered proposals. It's like, that's awesome, want that. That's okay. I can sort of compromise and negotiate. that's just terrible. No, no way, can't do. And mediators talk about BATNAs and WATNAs, like your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And we need to really reality check that. If your best alternative is going to court, you know, really think about that, the cost, the time, the stress, the time, you know, that the kids are involved in that conflict. And, you know, what's your worst alternative? Because that negotiated agreement might look way better than something that the court may impose. So those are really important things. And you know, finding someone to help you overcome those fears. Do you need that support person? What do you need to make you feel really confident in the process? And your communication strategies, unhooking from those button pushing, learning to listen without responding. Taking notes is really key in mediation. You know, writing it down, because you kind of forget and you're too busy wanting to respond. You're not actually listening and going, oh, I want to ask questions. And when those proposals come up, be really curious. Get an understanding, well, that's a great proposal, but how does that look for me? How does that look for you? Because you work till 5 o'clock at night. How are you going to pick up the kids at 3 o'clock after school? And look at that real practical stuff. So those things are really good to go through with the coach. So then you've got those goals sorted and you are ready to ask questions to get a better understanding. Because if you come to an agreement and you haven't thought about the practical side, you're going to go away and nothing's going to work. So yeah, I think those are the important things. Look at what the goals are and what you need to really participate well.
Yeah, and ask us curious questions. It's not all about yes and no, is it? It's about asking curious questions to get to yes, hopefully.
Yeah, and you know what? It's okay to go, I need to think about it. That's perfectly fine answer. You don't have to say yes or no. You can go, I just need to think about that and I need to come back. And it's okay to say, I need more information. And come back. It doesn't have to be settled then and there. If you're unsure, don't make that decision.
As you said earlier, Kelly, it can be, you know, 2 hours at a time. So if you're unsure about stuff in that initial mediation process, then you write those things down and you go away and you think about them. You can seek some outside expert advice if you need to, but then come back into the mediation process with a bit more understanding and a bit more kind of goal setting around, you know, what you want from that process.
Make the process work for you. You're in the driving seat.
Yeah. Good advice. Well done. Hey, well, that was such useful information, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing all your amazing knowledge and expertise. And if anyone has any further questions, then please reach out to any of us. We're all on the Find a Coach page. So if you want to directly go to Kelly and ask her any more questions about mediation per se, then feel free to. Otherwise, there's lots of links in our resource page on how to find a mediator through FDR Mediation or Fairway or all the different ones that Kelly talked about earlier. So please just head to the resources page on our website and you'll find a lot more information there as well. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and thank you, Kelly, again for tonight. It was very good.
Oh, thank you, and have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thanks, Kelly. Bye-bye.